My name is Jo Dalton and I'm a diabetes specialist nurse for the Young People's Diabetes Service in Poole Hospital, which is part of University Hospitals Dorset, which is a much bigger organisation now because we joined with a couple of neighbours in the last 12 months.
How's the last year been for you and your work?
Interesting and a bit tricky, and we've had to find new ways to keep in contact with our young adults. So to begin with, when it all sort of kicked off at the start of last year, we were doing lots and lots of phone calls. And some of those were phone calls from home on a work laptop and a work mobile phone. And then we had access to a thing called Attend Anywhere, which is a sort of video consultation program. And we found that quite a lot of people were quite happy to speak to us via Attend Anywhere. And we would post out HbA1c blood test packs, and then people could do their blood test and drop it into their GP surgery. And then within 2, 3, 4 days, we'd have a result, hopefully before we then spoke to them on the video or the telephone consultation. What we found is, as we're coming out of all the lockdown restrictions in 2021, that we're going to offer a selection of consultation options to our young people going forwards. So if you are having an annual review, then you need to come in to be seen face to face, so we can do blood tests and foot screening and check your urine sample and all those very practical things, looking at injection sites and so on. But if you're just having a review at some point later on in the year, every 3, 4 months afterwards, you can choose to do either another face-to-face, or you can do Attend Anywhere and upload your glucose data or your sensor data or your pump data to us, and we can do it that way. When we started to redo face-to-face appointments, most people do want to come back to face-to-face, which is really nice. I mean, I much prefer face-to-face, and I would choose that as a patient with diabetes as well, but realise that, you know, Attend Anywhere has had to be one of those systems that we've used in this rather tricky year.
What were the biggest changes that you had to adjust when we went into lockdown? And especially because obviously people living with diabetes, especially young people living with diabetes, had different considerations in terms of shielding and things like that. How did you see that knock-on effect?
Well, there's a couple of things there. The first is knowledge of IT systems. Now, because I'm at the older end of the age scale, then me and technology generally don't get on very well. So I've had to have quite a lot of help and support to make sure that I know how to log on to Attend Anywhere and how to make sure that I can look at people's pump and blood glucose and sensor data. So I've got to remember lots and lots of passwords that I didn't used to have to know. But what we have found is, because our caseload is 15 to 23-year-olds who are generally much more tech savvy than I am, certainly the rest of the team that I work with are a lot younger than I am, so they're more tech savvy as well. But for young people who are tech savvy, it's been relatively easy to do the technological consultations. It's still sometimes a bit tricky to upload the data. And that might be down to a Wi-Fi connection issue at home, or not having the most up-to-date browser, and all those sorts of things that cause some individuals in our service to struggle. One of the things that we have found helpful is some of our young adults have preferred doing Attend Anywhere video consultations because they've got other things going on in their lives. So if they're busy working, they can have Attend Anywhere on a lunch break or a coffee break at work on their phone and still be able to have a consultation with us and not have to miss work, which is great. Other people like the idea of not having to queue to get into the hospital car park and then have to sit for ages in the waiting room until it's your turn. So there's lots of that, which is positive. But I think one of the things that we all appreciate is that really seeing somebody face to face, there's something really rather lovely about it, because you get to have a whole conversation with them, and you can see when somebody's smiling and they don't freeze while you're having a real conversation. And that's really rather lovely. And that's an important aspect of our care in the young people service.
When we started going into lockdown, last year, what were your biggest worries, both for yourself and for the patients that you work with?
My biggest concern was my ability with IT. I mean, I really am dreadful. I think I'm probably one of those people when when you ring the IT service desk and you tell them your name, I think the person at the other end goes, "Oh yes, hello Joe," like I'm a known name for the IT service desk. But the thing for our young people is to make sure that we don't lose them. And if we're struggling to get in touch through telephone, text, or video consultation, then the risk is that they start to drop off the radar in our young people service, and very often these are vulnerable young adults who need to know that you're still there for them, and we have already a system where people can text, call, or email, and we have a generic team email account. So if it's in office hours, then chances are somebody will reply the same day. But if it's outside office hours, then somebody will reply the next day or the following working day. But the work mobile is generally answered really quite quickly. Lots and lots of people have texted to say things like, "Can I just ask you a quick question?" And if you can answer the question straight away, then it may save a hospital admission, or sort out a prescription request, or there's all sorts of little things that people need help and support with, which is easier when you can do face-to-face or phone calls, and becomes a little bit more tricky if you can only do virtual. There's a place for virtual, but I think there is still very much a place for face-to-face access to walk into a diabetes service if you're in town anyway, and say, I wonder if somebody can help me, my pen's just broken, or I'm here on a day trip and I've forgotten to bring some kit with me. That's always been a much easier thing to do when we've had an open front door diabetes centre. People sometimes come here on holiday because Poole is along the Jurassic Coast, and we've had all sorts of people turn up while they're here on holiday and say, "Can you just help me? This has happened." And you're like, "Yeah, okay, come in, let's see what we can sort out." And that's lovely to be able to offer and to make sure people enjoy their holidays.
Any moments over the last year that have really surprised you?
I suppose the thing that did surprise me, and this is a very recent thing, is that when we've said to people, you can attend anywhere, 2 or 3 appointments in the year and 1 face-to-face, the vast majority have said, "Actually, I'll come back and do face-to-face." Now, I assumed, because they're more tech savvy than I am, that more people would go for the virtual consultations going forwards, and most haven't. So I suppose that's my biggest surprise.
How have you found your patients have been managing their diabetes over the last year?
I think it's probably fair to say we've had a mixed bag. One of the things that has been recognisable is if you're a young person who's been furloughed and you're based at home and you're not actually allowed to work because you're furloughed, it potentially gives you an opportunity to spend more time to think about and focus on your diabetes. So some people have started to have a more focused approach to their diabetes care, and they may have started to do more exercise at home, or they've gone for a run every day, or they've done something because they've got to fill the day with doing something because they're not at work. Now, the people who find that that's been a helpful time in furlough, that's been great. And we've got a couple of people they've been furloughed, but then also their parents have. So it might be that their parents, even though they're sort of older teenagers and in their early 20s, you might still have a parent at home who says, "Are you scanning?" or "Have you counted your carbs for this meal?" Or, there's sort of little comments that the people who love you, who are around you, make just to check that you're actually on target with things. If everybody's furloughed at home, apart from living in each other's pockets, which can be a bit tricky, you get that sort of daily quick conversation about things related to your diabetes. And for some of our young people, that's been really helpful. For others, I guess if you're just doing virtual, then it's been a really open opportunity to sort of kick back, relax and think, wait and see. They're not going to see me in clinic now for ages, so I'll just take a bit of a back seat. And that I think depends on the individual.
What are you looking forward to now that we're all starting to open up a little bit more?
I am really looking forward to going and seeing friends and family. Absolutely. We're very fortunate that we've been able to do face-to-face clinics again from, let me think, we're in May now, aren't we? So we started to do face-to-face from the middle of April, because that was 6 weeks after schools and colleges had started back, and there wasn't a great influx of new COVID numbers. So it seemed a safe time to do that. So the thing for me is travelling, actually. I'd like to be able to take a holiday. I think it's probably going to be a staycation this summer. But one of my favourite places to visit are German Christmas markets in Advent. So hopefully by the end of November and early December, we can take our little camper van across to Germany and Belgium and visit Christmas markets again. That will be my look forward to situation.
It's a Christmas trip that's getting me through as well, I have to say.
Oh, is it?
Summer trip, Christmas trip, all the way. It would be really nice to know a little bit about how you found being a diabetic over the last year yourself.
Because I have type 1 diabetes as well, I had my 34th diabetic birthday on Star Wars Day earlier on this year. So May the 4th, 1987 was the day I was diagnosed. And I diagnosed myself because I was a student nurse. And I thought, oh, I'm weeing rather a lot here, so I'll dipstick and see if there's any protein, thinking I had a Waterworks infection. No protein, loads of sugar. And I thought, that's not right. Anyway, so I went to a doctor and said, hello, I think I'm diabetic. And I'd done an old-fashioned BM test strip. And you put the blood on, you timed it a minute, you wiped it, you timed it a minute, and then you compared the end of the test strip to the colours on the bottle, and it turned out that my glucose was in the 20s. And the junior doctor at the time was terribly excited because he'd never met a newly diagnosed diabetic before. So, but yeah, I've been a diabetic a long time. I've been a diabetes nurse since 1996. So I think I'm probably in a position to say that I'm quite fortunate that I generally know how to manage my diabetes, because if I can't manage my own diabetes, I probably shouldn't be doing this job. But my own diabetes has behaved itself pretty normally. I haven't had any great infections. We haven't had an issue with COVID positive infections in my immediate family and friends and relatives and so on, so it hasn't had a big impact. And yeah, I have an insulin pump, I have a glucose sensor, and so I have the ability to use the technology that's currently available to help me keep an eye on things anyway.
Thank you so much, Jo, for joining me today, and yeah, best of luck, and I hope you get to those Christmas markets.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
No
Bye-bye.
problem. Speak later. Bye.